Incremental greetings. Here's a recap of the event of the 35th anniversary of Spaced Repetition software and SuperMemo, because it started with SuperMemo. This event had the presence, the guests of Piotr Wozniak, the creator himself, and the CEO of SuperMemo World, Krzysztof Bidolek, which happens to be a very close friend, an old friend from Piotr's as well. So just in case you haven't seen, I did recaps of last year and 2 years ago, I think. So in this recap, as you can see here, I have some, let's say, slides to go through, and each of them it represents a chapter, and this video will be timestamped, so feel free to jump to the points you care about. So the idea is that I will provide more or less the major insights from this event by order of more relevancy, from SuperMemo as a software to the more free learning kind of guru stuff. So I think this year was more necessary than ever to recap, because the event had 2 stages. We did just 10-minute break between the transition of the stages. It was 4 hours and 40 minutes. You could say, oh wow, that's a big deal, that's kind of long, which it is. But from Piotr, a non-incremental approach of a direct voice chat with the community, disrupting his plan, that he follows his plan like a religion for many years, and that this linear event was close to 5 hours. It's massive. It's a massive deal. That means how important, how exceptional this event is, if he's making these exceptions himself. Cool, so let's start. The same question as last year. I started, I think, with the same question. I want to recap. SuperMemo, what happened? It's been a year, and Internet Explorer died. I forgot the exact date. I think it was April or something like that. And there is still not a new version. SuperMemo 19, it's not released. And it's not going to be released anytime soon. The exact date is unknown, but at least we know that don't be waiting for it. So I don't know if even this year will be released. To 2023, I mean. Then, something I ask is that I know that Wozniak is using a build for SuperMemo 19, because when he sends some emails, he sends the emails using the SuperMemo. And I see the version, and it says 19. And this has been true for 10 months or so, close to a year. So that means that he's using, I thought it was a beta build, but no, according to him, it's an alpha build, and he's not the only one using it. At least there are, let's say, about 5 people using this version. And in case you will ask, I'm not one of those. Not me. And then, one final follow-up question I did is, okay, so I know that the no updating to 19 because of the Internet Explorer unrelated is creating a lot of friction. Then I asked, has your workflow changed since Internet Explorer has been discontinued, right? Now the YouTube videos cannot be imported right away, and among other things. He said almost didn't suffer any change. But makes sense, because he's not using SuperMemo 18 as the rest of the community. He's using the own alpha release. Makes sense, he doesn't have any friction. So it's a pity we'll have to wait so long to get the public release of SuperMemo 19. And I think, based on what I have seen, 35 years, 18 versions, so an average of 2 years per version. It's never been so long without any release. SuperMemo 19 was released in 2018. Coincidence. The name doesn't stand for the year of the release. That means that now it's the longest release that is taking. It will be 2023. That means up to 5 years without any major release. Next thing is that Vidalek, the CEO, said that incremental reading is too Wozniak-centered. What does that mean? Is that the paradigm of incremental reading, it's based and built upon some assumptions, theoretical assumptions. Here you go, from Piotr. And what happened most recently with all the tests and algorithms and with artificial intelligence, what they found is that the theoretical assumptions done decades ago are kind of valid, are accurate enough. So goes in the right direction. Because you may have noticed that, oh wow, I want to read a peer-to-peer reviewed article in a journal that scientifically proves the science behind incremental reading. Right? It's powerful, it's awesome, but why it works like this or like that? And you may have seen that there's none. You cannot prove that with empirical evidence. And this goes in line with what they have been doing, what's called the expert algorithm. I understand this as expert users, and I know that SuperMemo 18, SM18 version of the algorithm, it's based on expert data of some tiny elite selection of users, let's say. And you have the other algorithm that is based on machine learning. So it doesn't have anything. It is not an expert. And it's just going to find the optimum. I am by no means expert. I'm actually interested in this kind of topics, but I lack all the fundamentals. So keep that in mind, all my limitations that they said about logistic regression, neural networks, and so on. It will be published next April or March. That means that next year, everyone will be able to see that. Cool. And something that Vidalek, the CEO, also mentioned is that, there's SuperMemo. When I always say, and most of the community say, SuperMemo, they are referring to SuperMemo for Windows. It's the official name on paper, SuperMemo for Windows. But SuperMemo, if I don't specify, it will go to the direction of the language app of SuperMemo World. And they actually tried GPT-2, so it's not the third, the ChatGPT that it has been released this month, December 2022. And what they tried with the language is conversational interaction. We could phrase it as conversational SuperMemo for language, not incremental reading, for language. So they tried this. I don't know the amount of success. Keep in mind, this version is kind of outdated. And the difference with the current version, it's massive. And I know that next year, it will be the GPT-4, even more advanced. So it will be nice to see if they release something about this eventually in the future. Next, open source. This topic was also covered last year. And what happened is that Vidalek thinks he doesn't feel confident. An open source company, it works a lot different. And he's not confident enough to do this switch if he will be able to see the company successful and so on, which makes sense. And what they said with Piotr is that they see if they go open source, they will see it as a mind network. So seeing society as a concept network, more or less, that everyone contributes a little on your expertise, what you do, what you know how to do it, and you like to do it. Your contributions will be like with minimum income, all of this. So it's very good in idealistic way point of view, but this in practice it will be really hard to make it a reality, especially if with SuperMemo that is way too niche. There's not enough people to have a big network. And one tweet from Lex Friedman. If you don't know who that is, I suggest to watch his podcast. Listen to his podcast. Extremely recommended. On the same day, he shared a tweet. Twitter is fun, I'm glad it exists. It's cool that billions of humans are connected to each other. Together, we are one weird and beautiful, living, intelligent, conscious system, slowly waking up. That goes really in consonance of this idea of society as a concept network. Next, I asked Piotr from someone that asked, "Oh yeah, there are some geniuses like Tesla and some others that was mentioned. I forgot which one in particular. That yeah, they were. It was great experience, but it was fun during all the process, just the outcome and so on." So you ask, okay, Piotr, you say that creating SuperMemo back in the 80s was pleasurable, but it has been pleasurable all day long, all year long, every single year, because it's been more than 3 decades. Even if it, at some point, that meant all-nighters, lack of sleep, sleep deprivation, a lot of hours straight with programming and so on. And he said yes, it has been fun. He regrets nothing. And a follow-up question is, yeah, but what about when you use SuperMemo? No, when it's, let's say, your creation, but as a user. And his recommendation is that if it's not pleasurable, stop using SuperMemo. Move on. Do something else. Watch a movie. Go exercise with friends. Whatever. That may be intrinsically pleasurable for you. If you have nothing to do, you will do that. You will do that. Do that action. It will be intrinsically pleasurable for you. Next day, you can go to SuperMemo again. Or next week. Next is, what about the long-term effects of a spaced repetition? We already know the short term. And if you go to look at scientific papers in research, formal research, everything, it's short term. Now you may realize, yeah, but it's been months or a year. That's long term. Well, in a spaced repetition, a year is short. It's really short. What happens if you use a spaced repetition for 3 decades? That's unknown to science. How many people have done this today, at the end of 2022? Piotr, some close friends, I think, that started SuperMemo super early on. That's pretty much it. He has 37 years experience of a spaced repetition. And it's not that, oh, yeah, it's my hobby. No, it's a daily thing. The question is, what are the changes? So, I hope it's late, but when Piotr dies, will he donate his brain to science to know what changes in the brain there are? What can be observed or seen that, oh, I just taking a wild guesses, because it is just anecdotal. It will be just one single brain, at least when this comes. It will be interesting. Not only that, it's about incremental reading, which is one step further, spaced repetition. If you take incrementalism so far that it becomes a lifestyle, like it happened to me already in just 2 years, what will happen with 22 years of incremental reading? That's massive. Massive. Then, now going more to the direction of SuperMemo, transcending a little the software now. Piotr said that for children, the repetition can be a put off, as they are always interested in new stuff. Why children? Many children love YouTube. They actually learn a lot from YouTube instead of the school. Yet adults doesn't see YouTube as one of the many platforms they can use for learning. It's not just vain entertainment. And the perspective is, you won't expect a 10-year-old, 8-year-old to use spaced repetition and go through the words that he learned in whatever language. Let's assume just a native language, and do spaced repetition on that, right? It will be tedious and boring for a kid. Next detail is about the jukebox. I mentioned this in the collections from Wozniak, that he has many collections. One of those is the jukebox. And what happens? I ask if he listens to music while he does SuperMemo sessions. He says he doesn't do it now, implying that before he did. And what happens is that I don't know what kind of music he listens to exactly, but I can tell it will be regular music with lyrics. And what happens is that now, if the music is too compelling, now the music is competing for your attention or the pleasure of your learning. You have both at the same time. So the music could be too distracting, let's say. That then you start dancing or going with the rhythm and whatever. So yeah, one idea is you can have an incremental jukebox. So you schedule when you want to listen to any song in particular in the future. Especially true if that song is very tied to memories or a feeling that you go to there instantly. Then someone said, oh yeah, I have been trying to use incremental reading for my school. I think it was high school, the last year or second last year of high school, but didn't work out at the end. So even he was really trying hard, because at the end of the day, incremental reading is not the paradigm of incremental reading, regardless of if you use software or which software you use. It's not compatible with schooling, with the traditional school system, because you don't choose whatever you want. You have massive amounts of knowledge, information to go through. With very little times, you have deadlines, you have to go through tests, and so on. And incremental reading is the antithesis of that. So yeah, you could focus on getting some aspects needed for whatever you're learning at the school and move on. And use incremental reading for your own learning, not for the school subjects. That's what I call in some videos free learning on the side. You cannot use incremental reading with deadlines and so on. It's impossible. You can use some aspects of it, but not enough to satisfy what is called the minimum definition of incremental reading. So basically, everything is reduced. Now if we take out of the equation incremental reading, we just say learning whatever I want, minimize the school, and maximize your own learning. I know I have been there. It's really hard or impossible. So nothing more to add from this recap. Now I see the recording. It's 46 minutes. I have talked way too much. I will be editing this. Feel free to speak your mind. Join the server, not just the SuperMemo wiki server, but the End of a School Slavery server. Links in the description. Speak your mind in the comments. And see you next year in the 36th anniversary.